big. It's hard to see, guys. Good evening, Tigard community. I am Police Chief Kathy McAlpine, and welcome to another segment of Chat with the Chief. First, I want to recognize that this has been long overdue. Checking my records, I see that the last time we were able to meet and chat was in August 5th of 2020. So a lot has happened since then. Please remember that this Chat with the Chief is for you, for me to answer your questions, address your concerns. So if you would please send us your comments and questions into the chat box as we go along, I will answer your questions as they come in. As always though, I do have a prepared information to share with you as you start getting comfortable with asking me questions. Very unique, I don't think it was planned at this time, is that this is a palindrome, forever known as a palindrome Chat with the Chief, since it is February 2022, so 2/22/2022. So that'll always be a memory for us to share. The other thing I want to pass along, if you had been listening and may have heard sirens, about 1:30 this afternoon, we had an armed robbery. This happened on the corner of Pacific Highway, or 99W, and Southwest Walnut Street. Just after about 1:30, a woman who displayed a handgun robbed a coffee stand, then left the area in a car driven by a man. Thankfully, nobody was hurt. Responding officers did flood the area, but were not able to immediately locate the suspects. The woman is described as white, in her 40s, with short pink hair and a bun. She was wearing glitter lipstick and a red hoodie. A description of the man driving the car was not available at this time, but the car is believed to be a light green Kia Soul. So again, if you have any information or see this vehicle, please do not hesitate to call 911. Thank you for that. A couple other information I do want to share with you is, if you haven't taken it yet, we are trying to do a police communication survey. So how can we best serve you in getting information out? And if you would take that survey, just go to surveymonkey.com/r/Tigard Police Communications. It closes at the end of this month, so I'd greatly appreciate your feedback on that. And last, very exciting news, we are going to be hosting a long overdue community academy this spring. For anybody, we're going to hopefully 20 to 25 people. It's going to be live because there's a lot of interactions and tactile touching and demonstrations. So if you want to take a look inside of what the police department and how we serve the community, please think about applying. It's an 8-week commitment, Wednesday evenings from April 6th to May 25th. Registration is free. Just head to tigard.or.gov at Community Academy to sign up. Or just get hold of one of us and we'll be happy to explain what it is in a little bit more detail. Now we're going to try something different tonight, and that is because, if you recall again, since August 2020 was our last time here, a lot has happened. In particular, George Floyd we were discussing. We were talking about police reform. At that time, the Public Safety Advisory Board had not been even thought of. That came about in December of 2020. So what I thought was real important is to share with all of you what the Public Safety Advisory Board has been doing for the last year. And so I've asked two PSAB, as we call it, members, Patty Lofgren and Jimmy Brown, to come join me and talk a little bit about what the PSAB is doing. And again, they're going to be here for about 20 minutes. So if you have questions particularly geared towards the Public Safety Advisory Board, I would ask that you go ahead and type those questions in right away. So Jimmy and Patty, if you'd like to join me. Absolutely. Well, just to kind of get things started, I'm going to kick it off with a question for both of you. So what topic area have you enjoyed learning about the most? And Patty, I'll start it with you.
Oh my goodness. We've had 27 meetings now. We meet every second and fourth Monday. And I have found every topic to be extremely informative and helpful, but I think possibly the one topic that resonated for me in this day and age was the mental health response. I was just so pleased to know, both here in the city of Tigard and in cooperation with Washington County, that there are mental health professionals that respond with officers to those situations, which just seems to me so critically important. So that was, I mean, it's hard to decide on a favorite topic because have all been so informative. I've learned so much, and I mean, it was an honor to be a part of this group, but I continue to look forward to the meetings and to everything I'm learning.
Yeah, and as a lifelong educator, I enjoy the way you look at things, the way you ask and probe, and so it's been very delightful to have you on asking how we do things. And Jimmy, for you, and again, long-standing person in the community, you have extensive history with city government, you've had lived experience, so tell me what you've enjoyed the most.
You know, like with Patty, I've enjoyed it all, but the things that really resonate with me, the hiring process. Not most folks in the community probably don't understand the hiring process, don't know how a person becomes a police officer in Tigard, but I have seen both through PSAB and as well as participating on interview committees with the city and with Tigard, I've seen a department that has a very strong hiring process. It's not an easy process. The questioning, the actual interviews, both virtual and face-to-face when we had the opportunities to do that, are inclusive, exhaustive, and I think it shows in how we've been able to hire some good officers for the department. Further, I think the interview process connects with the chief's vision as well as the vision of City Council, and in terms of walking the talk. A focus on the mission and the values of the organization and the mission and values around social equity, justice, and ensuring that people's lived experiences in Tigard are positive.
And I think both of you have had an opportunity to sit on those oral boards, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And it's so critical to have community members sitting there, because that's your first initial opportunity to say who you also want serving in your community. And so I've enjoyed having both of you on those panels and your feedback. So another question is, what is one thing you wish the community knew about Tigard PD that you have learned through this process?
Well, now I'm going to take the teacher hat.
Okay.
Having been a classroom teacher for many, many years, one of the things that, and then doing professional development with my colleagues, one of the things I've always said is we have a very important job as educators, and the world is continually changing, and our job, we have to continue to examine and refine our classroom practice on an ongoing basis, and if you're not willing to do that, you need to retire. And one of the things I was just astonished about in terms of learning at these PSAB meetings is, first of all, the level of training it takes to become a Tigard police officer. It is not an easy process. It's very extensive and very long. But after that, I was amazed at the fact that you all work so hard to continue to examine and refine your practice. On an ongoing basis. It doesn't end once you become an officer. It is a continuous process, and it really knocked my socks off to see that level of commitment to continually refining. I think the PSAB is feeding into that. You're asking for us to help you through that process to bring a different lens, and especially the diversity, equity, inclusion lens that Jimmy was just talking about. So that, I think, was the one thing that I just wanted to get up and dance when I realized
I appreciate that. And thank you for bringing in the question on, what is an oral board? And so, again, we live it and breathe it, so sometimes I say things without needing explanation, so thank you for bringing that question to us. So an oral board, after an individual has applied then first step is an oral board. It's a panel made up of not only our community members, but members of the police department. And there's a series of questions that they're asked to get to know the applicant a little bit further. There's a broad, not technical, because we don't expect you to have the technical knowledge yet, but just to see how you can think critically through a few questions, handle a little bit of stress, and then, as both have said, we also try and infuse a little bit of cultural competency in those questions. So, and Jimmy, what about you? What would you like the community to know?
You know, I think Patty took my thought around training, which is okay. But I really want the community to know that we have a department that is not afraid to look at itself. We are no longer just the bedroom community to Portland, Oregon, or the sister community to Beaverton or Tualatin. We have our own space and we have our own place in the metropolitan area. And we have a department, I believe, that has really taken to the challenges that many police departments across the country have been facing. They are examining what I will call the 3 Ps, if I can remember these: policies, programs, and practices, all of which are very, very important as it relates to how do we provide a community with public safety connectedness and also be able to really examine the type of work that we do, to look at some of the statistics that come through, to ensure that, you know, we are working hard to make this community a place where people of color, our elder community, our youthful community, our teenage community, all feel as though they're getting a fair shake when they have some engagement situation with local police.
I appreciate that. And then again, for those tuning in live, we are having a little bit of difficulty displaying our questions, so please keep them coming, and then I'll be able to answer them as I see them coming in. I think we're almost got that fix going. So I appreciate that. So we have, right now, the Public Safety Advisory Board is scheduled to meet all the way till June. I know some of our topics are traffic stops, school resource officers, anything else that, again, there's always time for community comment that anybody can do on those Monday meetings. So please note, if you have a question for any of the board members, that's a perfect place to do so. Any last, because I love kind of impromptu, extemporaneous type comments, I'm going to give you guys any unscripted comments that you'd like to share with the community from your experience thus far.
Well, I mean, this is maybe a little off topic, but the one topic we haven't gotten to that I'm very much looking forward to is the school resource officers as an educator. And I think it says a lot to the sort of philosophy of this police department that when the whole movement was to get rid of school resource officers, students at Tigard High School got a petition with many, many, many signatures saying, please save Officer Imus, not wanting their school resource officer to go away because he had become someone they depended on and knew cared about them. Right. And I think that is a reflection of this entire police department. I feel like this police department is focused on the community, cares about the community, and I have never even, I've lived here longer than you. I've lived here 30 years now, and I never really knew the police department until the last 5 or 6 years, and learning about it has just made me feel so grateful to be here and to have this kind of police force in my community.
Thank you for that. Jimmy?
You know, we've had some, I think, wonderful discussions with the chief and with her management team and officers that have come and spoke in front of PSAB. I was struck by the discussions that we had around body cams.
Yes.
We live in a time where, you know, many folks have video cams on their cell phones. They utilize those to capture all sorts of situations. And we've been fortunate enough to have people who have used their video machines to let us know when they believe that something is happening that doesn't look right. George Floyd obviously is a key portion of that. At the same time, I think there have been discussions nationally about why we should or shouldn't have body cams, but I found that Tigard embraced the concept of having new equipment, body cams being part of that equipment, came to PSAB and asked for PSAB to review that process, provide a focused recommendation to the chief, and then who took that forward to City Council. And the discussion was robust. And I think it played well because the PSAB agreed that this is a recommendation that should move forward.
Yeah, and for those listening in, if you weren't aware, I think it's been since July, Tigard Police Department has fully implemented body-worn cameras. We did have a few deployed for many years, and of course dash cams, but to actually get full deployment of body-worn cameras on all uniform, upgraded dash cameras was huge, and it was a robust discussion with the Public Safety Advisory Board. It was also at a time where we were welcoming a new city manager. And I know, I for one, thank you. You were instrumental in getting us to have it sooner rather than later. And that has been very beneficial to both sides. The officers welcomed the added technology, and I think just that transparency and accountability has served our community well so far.
Well, I want to build on that because that is one example of what has surprised me throughout this entire process. Is the amount of power our recommendations seem to have. I mean, I had no idea that these conversations that we had and recommendations we made would be taken so to heart by the police department. I mean, the body-worn camera is a beautiful example, but almost every time we've come up with, well, why don't you do this? And then we find out you're doing that. And it's been extremely rewarding in that our conversations have been meaningful and have been heard.
Yeah. Well, I thank you. With that, I know we're still trying to get some questions coming in. I was able to see one that I'll go ahead and answer as I let you. This is more about just, you know, what's the update on our new officers, and do we have additional detectives? So again, the public safety levy was passed in 2020 that allowed us to get 8 sworn police officers and add 1 additional school resource officer. It also allowed us to add 2 support staff to basically handle the workload that our officers produce. And we were able to hire 8, but then again, some don't quite make it through the training program. We've had officers who have retired, or we've had officers who have lateraled or moved to another agency or out of state to another agency. So right now we have 2 vacancies. The other thing we're challenged with is we've hired a couple entry, what we call new officers, and it's difficult to get them into the police academy. We're waiting 4 months just to get them in the academy, and then the academy is another 4 months, and then the training program. So often we don't see officers on their own for about 18 months, and so we are challenged with that. And then Veronica, you asked, welcome from Grand Round. You want to be a police officer, but health prevents you from being one. Well, thank you for considering you know, that level of service. I will just let you know that we do have applications for our non-sworn that help support our officers greatly. Those are in the records and property and evidence. I think the records one is now open. You can definitely look at that, but I know that that's a bit of a ways from Tigard. So look in your community to see those civilian positions, because they're as vital as officers out on the streets to keep us going and functioning. So any level of service is rewarding, and I appreciate your consideration. With that, I'm going to thank both of you for taking the time to chat with me. I look forward to our Monday robust discussions.
Yes.
Thank you for your time commitment and your dedication to the community. Patty, you had one more thing.
I had one more question. So you were absent from one of our PSAB meetings last year. We understood you were at a conference on the East Coast that the FBI had hosted. And I think it was Commander McDonald who mentioned that the city of Tigard had received quite a good score in terms of the different police chiefs, et cetera, that were there. Can you talk a little bit about what rubric was used, what the scoring was about, and what stood out for the city of Tigard?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question, because you don't always like to toot your own horn, right? But it was an unexpected honor, and one that I was very proud of our agency for. So I had the opportunity, it's very select for chiefs across the country and internationally, to do a 2 weeks leadership development. So you have to be a police chief or sheriff. And we had 43 different agencies, again, internationally and around the country in these 2 week sessions. One of the sessions was a strategic planning block. And strategic planning is so important when you talk about the direction, the future, the culture of an organization, and where you're going to put your priority, both on your resources of officer resources or employee resources, but also financial. And through this process, as he was going through what he scored rubrics for, mission, vision, and values, transparency, accountability, actually moving towards your strategic plan, just to name a few, he had put it on anonymously how this class scored at 43 agencies. And there was only one agency that was in the 16 to 20 points, 20 being the max. And as he's going through talking a little bit more, he walked up to me and presented me with an FBI coin and said that Tigard had scored 20 out of 20 points, which was, a monumental feat. And so again, he was able to say that online, any of our community members can see exactly what we're trying to accomplish, how we've been successful in that, what is still left, and sharing that with that transparency. And so very honored, because it also shows our employees, our community, that what we do, because we all hear strategic plans, sometimes check a box, put them on a shelf, and you never do anything with them. But ours is a breathing document. Ours has been a roadmap for the last 3 years of intentionality of what we're trying to accomplish. And so, yes, I was very honored on behalf of our department and the city to receive that award. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, well, good for Tigard.
So again, I thank you both for your time.
Thank you, Chief.
And again, till our next discussion, take care.
Yes, all right.
Appreciate it.
Good to be here. Thank you for having us.
So again, as questions do come in, I'll be happy to pause and answer those questions, because those are the most important to me. But what I will kind of talk about, it might spur some questions all for you, is if you did not know, once a month, usually the first Tuesday of every month at the council meeting, I present the monthly dashboard. And it's 4 pages of information. It's available on our website after I present it, and so you can see how the crime trend is doing, our photo enforcement numbers, staffing, our response times, how we're doing with the levy, how we're hiring, lots and lots of information. And I usually get about 5 minutes, and I inform the council on what I think are emerging trends or the priorities at the moment. And so last Tuesday, I did have an opportunity to present to the council that our January stats for stolen vehicles was concerning. We were up 190% from January of 2021. So we had 32 stolen cars in the month of January. And one of the other trends that we saw was that we recovered about 17 stolen vehicles within the city limits. And a majority of those were Portland stolen. And we're hearing that a majority of our Tigard stolen are being recovered in Portland. So you can see a kind of a nexus going on, and that geographically our criminals don't really think about borders, and that we're one big sprawl. So I wanted to put that on everybody's radar for you to do what you can do, to park your vehicles, don't warm them up. I know we're going to have a cold trend here, and we don't want you warming up your vehicles, leaving them unattended. And obviously the lighting, things of that nature is going to help us. And then the good old-fashioned club or any other thing that you can do is going to help thwart it or send somebody to another vehicle, not yours. The other thing I talked about, and unfortunately some of you may experience this, is our catalytic converter thefts. And they are, it's not just in Tigard, not just in Oregon, it's across the country. And why? Right now, precious metals they're getting a lot of bang for their buck, and catalytic converters contain a lot of precious metals. Things like rhodium, platinum, and palladium are just a few. They can get anywhere from 150 to 200 a piece at scrap metal facilities. Now, Oregon did pass a law in the first of this year, 2022, that really deters scrap metal businesses from taking that in, or at least getting identification, things of that nature. So we'll see if that deters them at all. But the other information, if you didn't know, when you're thinking about your car, your vehicle, they do attack low emission vehicles, so your hybrids, your Priuses, because they have more precious metals. They also like trucks, vans, SUVs, because they're easy to quickly get it underneath them, because it only takes a matter of seconds to take a Sawzall and cut them out. So how can you tell if you've had one that is stolen? You're going to hear a roaring or loud noise. It could be a bumpy ride since the exhaust is not working right. You might hear a sputtering sound when you accelerate. And then, of course, when you look underneath, you might see a large hole under your car. And you may even actually have a smell that's kind of a strange toxic fumes. So what can you do to prevent? This is something the council asked me as well on Tuesday night. Just know what they're targeting and know your vehicle that you drive. You can install an anti-theft device. They're steel and you can be bolted on. And you can lock the converter. They're anywhere from $350 to, I've heard, $150 online. You can engrave your VIN or your license plate number. So again, if they take them to scrap metal, they'll know that it was probably stolen. Some have said you can spray paint like a bright orange. Again, that's a flag for those who are taking in metals. Park in a well-lit area or have your motion sensor lights. They also might see patterns, right? So if you do a park and ride or park, at a business location for long periods of time, they may start to see your pattern. So those are just some of the things I wanted to share with you, and we'll get more out through our social media as well. And I think I did have one. So Whitney, that's great for Tigard. Thanks for sharing the information. Congratulations. Thank you, Whitney. I appreciate that. And then Max wants, I hear stolen cars are sitting in driveways on Washington Drive. Or sitting in a driveway on Washington Drive. Please call in. If you believe there's a suspicious vehicle or sitting there, call it in. Officers can run that right away. We're recovering them nightly, and there's no set geographic area. They're dispersed throughout the city. So all of you kind of know your neighbors, your eyes and ears, and report anything that doesn't seem right to you and suspicious. You just need to probably tell us exactly why you think it's concerning, so that'll help us in deciding what our response should be. So again, please keep the questions coming, because I want to make this as meaningful to you as it is for me. With that said then, something else I'd like to share again is, we finished 2021 in a pandemic, in isolation for everybody. So what did that do to the crime in Tigard? And so we have what's called persons crimes. That can be your assaults, your robberies. They were up slightly from 2020, in that we had about a 3% increase. For our property crimes, which can be your burglaries, also just your stolen vehicles and thefts in general, which we talk about, shoplifting and the catalytic converters, and it'll even include vandalism. Overall, in those categories, we were up just a little under 1%, so holding steady. But we did see, again, an increase in storage burglaries during this pandemic, and that was about a 134% increase. So if you are utilizing them, you know, and not checking on it regularly, you should probably want to check in your storage units to make sure that everything's as it should be. Our societal crimes is down a little bit, and often those are very proactive. We are doing a lot more DUI emphasis. That has increased, and I think that is a good thing, getting dangerous drivers off the street. Our drug offenses, when they basically decriminalize possession, is gone 73% decrease, so that's gone way down. Our arrests have gone up quite a bit, but the challenge has been that we can't take them to jail if they're a misdemeanor, so not a felony, not a serious violent crime. Unfortunately, like catalytic converters, we were able to arrest a few people, but it's just releasing them on a citation. And we know that that is not an effective deterrent. So we're making arrests out there, but we're not able to take them to jail due to the COVID restrictions. Because again, as you can imagine, in close population, they have to test for anybody coming in, they have to isolate just like the rest of us, and so that has really significantly impacted not only the jail population, but the corrections officers who work it, who get exposed and then have to do their quarantine. And the other thing to note is our dispatch calls. So those are when you are calling us in the 911 system or the non-emergency. Those are continuing to increase at about 3.5%. So that's just an increased workload that we're handling right now. And so sometimes our response times can be a little bit longer as we're tied up on calls. The other thing that I've heard quite a bit about, a lot of frustration, and that is regarding our unhoused population. You may hear it as unhoused or homeless problem. And a lot of frustration, a lot of compassion has gone on for the last year and a half. Is the visibility has increased quite a bit. And I just want to acknowledge that. The council has made it a priority, so much so that it's one of their main goals, which is to develop a person-centric regional approach to addressing homelessness. So I'm part of that group, and we're working with Washington County on resources, but it has been very slow in developing the resources. Also in the last 2 years, there's been significant case law. If you've heard what's called the Boise decision or Grants Pass decision, which really decriminalizes homelessness, and so really takes away the tools that the police have. And there's some who, you know, have believed that it should never been a police issue anyway, and routing it through social services. But oftentimes as first responders, we get calls on either welfare checks or concerning behavior, and so we still come in contact, and oftentimes are the first opportunity to see if they can get to resources. I do have a question from Irene. With the FBI leadership meeting, did you get statistics of low-income housing creating more robberies or other crimes? No, we didn't really get into any of the trends that people are seeing nationally, so that's not one that we discuss. Ours were more at the chief level in leadership, strategic planning, things of that nature. And going on again with our unhoused issues, again in a pandemic, the request was to keep people in place, shelter in place. Well, that also include our unhoused. So if they were in some sort of encampment, it was best to leave them there as opposed to displacing them. And so that has been going on. We have slowly taking some encampments away. and again, always offering services, but there are still known encampments out there. So again, if you are aware of an encampment, please go to the City of Tigard website under homelessness, and it will walk you through it, and it will also put you in touch. Washington County overall is trying to track this as well, and as I said, we're in great partnership. Now, we also know that with our unhoused individuals comes some mental health or substance use disorders. And again, the national narrative is, should police be responding to people in mental health crisis? Are they the best avenue? And so this was long overdue. Washington County Mental Health Team, response team, has been in place for well over 10 years. And they've responded to the city of Tigard, but they were also responding throughout all of Washington County. So their resources have been drained for a long time. And it just became a point where the South cities, you know, Tigard, Tualatin, Sherwood, King City, we felt like we needed a team that was located in the south end of the county. So we're still part of the Washington County Mental Health Response Team, but we have a South Cities team, and Tigard is part of that. And so we have a mental health clinician that will ride 2 days with Tigard, 2 days with Tualatin, and then Sherwood. And again, King City doesn't have the resources to offer an officer, but they did offer some equipment. So that has been in place now for a couple of months, and it has been a fantastic program. And we've been able to divert a lot of calls where people are in a mental health crisis and really be able to turn it over. Once we've made sure the scene is safe, turning it over to the clinician who has access to all the resources, their history, things of that nature. So look for more information on that program, but it's been a huge success. So again, if you have any questions or comments for me to clarify on anything that I've shared with you, please don't hesitate to ask and send them in. So, you know, on our strategic plan, just what has been our priorities? You know, professionalism, our level of engagement to our community, utilizing technology and social media platforms, just building trust in our community. Those are some of our strategic priorities. Again, the entire plan is on our website. You can have access to it and kind of dive into it and see what interests you. But embedded in that was making sure that we were properly staffed for resources. And this is a perfect time for me to say yet again, and I will say it many times, thank you for passing the public safety levy. Because without it, nobody could anticipate at that time a pandemic. And when that levy was passed and we started hiring, we got enough officers trained and on board that allowed us to stay afloat and keep our regular staffing numbers. When officers had been exposed and in quarantine, we had year-long deployments in the military, because as you know, our men and women also, a lot of them come from serving the military still. And I can't thank you enough. We would not have been able to continue the level of service during this pandemic if we did not have those additional officers. So how are we doing with COVID? Wow, you know, I think all of us are struggling, trying, you know, whether you want to say sick and tired of it, frustrated, stressed. The police department is no different. Although I can tell you unequivocally, we were here every day during the last 2.5 years during this pandemic, and that means all of us, our support staff, our detectives, the command staff, and of course the officers working the streets. We had robust COVID plans, protocols in place, and had contingency plans if a whole squad or shift was exposed. And we had several were exposed, and we were able to do it on overtime or bring some we always alerted detectives to bring your uniform and be ready to hit the streets if we need to. Fortunately, we never had to do that, and I do say fortunate because there are other agencies who were not as fortunate as us and were impacted greatly. As a city, we're looking to monitor what's OSHA going to do, and the Oregon Health Authority and the governor on their timeline on masks. And for us, what we're looking for is when can we start interacting more with the public on different events and different outreach. As I mentioned in the beginning, we want to do a community academy. That'll be one of our first outreaches, getting back connected with the community. And then we'll look for other opportunities in April, May, and then of course going into the summer. So another question was, what will we cover in the community academy? Oh boy, from start to finish, every aspect of the police department. What do different units do? What does a canine unit do? That's usually a very popular one because a canine officer and their canines will come in. They'll do demonstrations. You'll be able to answer questions. We'll talk about, as you heard, our hiring process and how do we vet people out, and what does the training academy look like. A lot of times it's our, what is our use of force laws? How do we train for our tools, such as firearms, tasers. We have simulators, so kind of it goes way beyond. It's very interactive, and I would imagine that this class will get a chance to kind of walk in our shoes. I know the Public Safety Advisory Board did that, and that was extremely eye-opening, is when they're donning on a gun belt in their vest and they're having to interact, and depending on what they say, that person on the screen is going to do any number of things to include walking away, saying okay, to presenting a weapon. And so we'll make sure that our academy gets a chance to look at that as well. And again, remember that starts April 6th, goes through May 25th on Wednesdays in the evenings. And unfortunately, again, it's not going to be a hybrid. It's going to be in the classroom at this time, because we just feel like that ability to be hands-on, touch things, take tours of the police department and some of our facilities. So we're going to try it that way. But definitely a classroom, tours, site visits. You'll see some videos. We'll keep you the dialogue going. So again, how do you apply for it? Go to www.tigard.or.gov/community academy. And again, if I'm talking too fast, all of this is on our website. So please take a look at that. Oh, and the link is in the chat. So thank you, support staff, for doing that. Appreciate it. So I know that we have covered quite a bit. We have still about 12 minutes. So again, if there's anything that you would like to know, ask some questions, please don't hesitate to ask. With that said, I don't know, Patty and Jimmy, is there anything else you'd like to share? I know I only gave you a short bit of time, but it's always good to hear the community's perspective. If you want to, you're welcome to join me. One of the things that the Public Safety Advisory Board is talking about right now is this proposal I have for a professional standards sergeant. And it really is that sergeant who hones in their skills on not only complaints, doing thorough, more high-level investigations. Feel free to come on up. But it also is really overseeing our robust training program, looking for, when we do a use of force, it's all documented, having that sergeant do a deep dive and getting with the subject matter experts to see if was the tools appropriately applied, was it effective, and what could we do differently or incorporate into our annual training. So that professional standards sergeant is critical for an agency our size. And I think, again, it really speaks to the accountability and transparency aspect of this. So Patty and Jimmy, you know, but this is the fun part, no planned questions. So I don't know if you, when you were sitting there, if you had a chance to really kind of think about some things else you want to share with the community from your perspective, but Patty, go ahead.
Well, one of the things that I made notes in thinking about tonight's presentation was the level of the informativeness of the presentations. When we have our Public Safety Advisory Board, there's generally a topic for each evening, like procedural justice, use of force, mental health response, complaints and discipline, body-worn cameras. And each evening, there is usually a sergeant from the department whose that area of expertise that is. And they have probably a 30 to 50-minute presentation where we learned so much about that topic that really gives us a window and insight into what's going on in the police department. I feel like I've learned 1,000 years worth of information in the 27 meetings we've had. And I just so appreciate the amount of preparation that those officers, those sergeants have to do, including the PowerPoint and et cetera, et cetera. It really, and then they take our questions, which is just so.
Again, and you can never anticipate what those
No,
questions,
no.
I mean, so that's the fun part or the challenging part.
Right.
One of the things that I think Whitney had asked was, you know, do we, are they trained, are officers trained in working with and responding to people with disabilities, you know, and again, you might be talking about autism, things, especially in adult. I know that is a concern. And yes, we do have training regarding that. A lot of times it is in the virtual world, but there's a segment, again, going back to the public safety levy, part of it was the advanced 40-hour crisis intervention training. In that, they cover not only PTSD or dealing with veterans, people with substance use disorders, but they also go into things like autism and really will do the role play and what is the best practices. So all our officers will eventually get through that, but we have several that have been through that training. The other thing, and this is groundbreaking for both of you, and I haven't shared it with the Public Safety Advisory, is to add to our virtual training is the virtual reality. I don't know if you guys have seen kind of like the, you know, goggles and
Yes.
whatnot. So we're just testing that. And one of the many programs is a segment on autism. And so an officer can kind of see what is going on and really how to communicate. And then it allows you to switch and kind of be in the shoes of somebody else. And so I hope to bring that to the Public Safety Advisory Board. Sergeant Erickson is leading that. And so I know that I've had a chance to look at it a little bit. But, you know, it goes through scenarios, domestic violence calls, and it's one of the leading cutting edges of technology for police departments to enhance their training. And it can be, you can unplug an officer off the streets, do that for 30 minutes, even less than that, get back in so you don't have to wait for that quarterly training. Jimmy, any other thoughts you had?
I just want to put out that PSAB has been working with Chief on the professional standards sergeant position, which given the data and information that has come from the department on the need for such a position, I believe the PSAB is strongly looking at forwarding that recommendation back to the chief with a positive stamp on it. At the same time, PSAB is looking at having discussions, or has been having discussions with the chief and other members of the department about a position that would function as an advocate that is not necessarily a sworn position. We know that often folks will not necessarily speak to police officers or someone from the department if they are having challenges or have had a challenge with someone or something in the department. So we're exploring the possibility of having an advocate that could be that person for community residents to come to if they have such a challenge. We've had some robust discussions about it. I think we are going to continue to have those discussions as we move forward. And I really value the work that PSAB members have provided through this process when we talk about these kinds of discussions. You know, the chief has been excellent in hearing our discussions, providing some deep content to those discussions, and I believe that that just helps PSAB do the work that we need to do.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. Go ahead. Okay.
One other thing I want to add is the tapings of our meetings are on the Tigard website. So you can actually watch our meetings, from the 2-hour meetings that happen the second and fourth Monday of every month. You can also attend those meetings and ask questions live, or you can submit your questions if you have questions or comments or thoughts that you'd like to bring to our attention. I think the questions have to be written by 4 or 4:30 on that Monday, but you can also just drop in on the sessions and ask a question. That public comment session happens right at the beginning of the meeting, right after 5:15. And we welcome you joining us and asking questions, making comments, viewing those meetings.
Yeah, and it's not too late. Like I said, we're going till June, and whatever, we may have a set topic, but there's always a portion in time to set aside for either current events, something that's happened locally or across the country that it's worth speaking about, but also we can go and revisit anything based on the community just now asking a particular question. So again, I know both of these members would love to hear more folks. The whole group is dedicated to not only sharing their lived experiences, and they it's been quite interesting, and it requires a level of trust and vulnerability, but they also try and represent our community at large, and so they need to hear your lived experiences, your concerns, so that again that dialogue and that feedback gets to us, and together we are always better, because at the end your police department is here to serve you, to keep you safe, and we want to be that professional but approachable department that you don't hesitate to call anytime.
And I just want to mention, you mentioned the autism, et cetera. On the Public Safety Advisory Board, there is one member is a mental health professional. And also, when I did the oral boards, there were 2 officers, there was myself, and there was a mental health professional on the oral boards, both times also.
Yeah,
so that attention to mental health issues, I think is something to commend the Tigard Police for.
Thank you. And again, just a reminder, we have posted the link to the Public Safety Advisory Board on the website and in the chat box, so make that easy for you. Also, again, when pandemic and a lot of things have been closed, our police lobby is open. It's open daily from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. We have a whole new brochure display on the wall, so please feel free to take a look at it. Topics are neighborhood watch, preventing shoplift, a checklist for securing your home, our annual reports. Come on in, grab them, because again, we're here to just provide you with the necessary tools that you may need to keep yourself safer. And we're just about to wind down. We have just a couple minutes, so one more moment to get you a chance to ask your questions. But while you're thinking about your question, I'll close in my closing thoughts here. Again, very honored to have a very professional public information officer, Kelsey Anderson. She comes from an extensive news background, and if you haven't paid attention, her social media posts, her news releases are very timely, well done. But I offer that her latest brainchild has been our digital newsletter that we do once a month. We've done December and now January. We've had a phenomenal amount of comments and that people thoroughly enjoyed them. Please take a look at those. They will give you a synopsis of what has happened in the last 30 days that we think you should know. So please go look for that. It is on your YouTube. Go to Tigard Police, like and subscribe. They're on a playlist, and we have several playlists that includes videos with Spanish subtitles. Again, whether you take that communication survey or just give us some feedback on suggestions or other things that you would like to know about, the communication is only as beneficial as it is to you. So we appreciate that. And again, we've again made it easier by putting the communication survey into the chat as well. So with that, I again really want to extend my appreciation to both Patty and Jimmy.
Thank you.
For taking the time out, because again, as you've heard, they do every other Monday, and so to yet add a Tuesday night into this, I really appreciate both of your partnership, your commitment to this community and making us better, and I look forward to more collaboration.
Absolutely.
So with that said, Tigard, good night. Thank you very much, and I promise you it will not be over a year before we have another chat, but hopefully it will be in person.
Oh, yes.
So take care and good night. Thank you.